we're definitely not underemployed. There's a lot of us being busy here. Also, kind of, this, I wanted to make another point on the weather that we've been facing. This is a definite kind of structured effort by the World Bank management to convince us all that life in the country offices is good. Okay, now on incubation and entrepreneurship. I want to talk a little bit about about entrepreneurs as the people that will be changing the way that the sector operates. And so there is a tremendous challenge, as we've seen in the earlier presentations, a tremendous challenge of moving from a primary production towards a very much more integrated sector that kind of, let's say, links with urban development, that provides food to people that are kind of far away from the rural area. So I want to go a little bit through some tools that we've been using for that, and I want to kind of start drawing some conclusions on what it implies for us. Now, one of the nice things of the bank, and we've seen that in the current design of this session, is we always have analysis and we have practice. And we learn from the analysis and we learn from the practice. And so what you find often in the practice is that things are being done before it's understood why we need to do them. Now, that's going to come up in some of my slides. But the challenge, what is one of the major challenges that we're facing? And we deal with the 500 million farmers, and Parmesh wants to call them small entrepreneurs. But at the same time, many of these people are in farming because it's a way of life. It went from mother to daughter, from father to son. It's not a choice, they're just there. The type of agriculture that we would want to aspire to in the future is where being in agriculture is a choice, where people are there because they've chosen to do that. If it's a choice, we can also expect different ways that these people will behave. For the ones that are there because it's a way of life, how could you expect that that would be the most dynamic sector you can imagine? It's not so easy. Now, also on the challenge, kind of the challenge that we're facing is enormous. And I wanted to kind of go through two pathways. In the old traditional agriculture, we basically are combining land, water and seed, maybe a few other inputs, and that's it. But then if we go to the more urban-oriented agriculture, kind of to supplying food systems, transport and marketing become very, very important. These are completely different skill sets that need to be integrated, completely different types of resources that need to be there. In a similar way, if you look what agriculture did, it produces food for people that eat it, the nutritional value. Then in the more modern systems, convenience comes up, price comes up. It's very different factors that we need to kind of to start understanding. Now, who is pushing that way forward? That's the agribusiness. So the agribusiness starts bringing in all these different types of dimensions. But that is often not so straightforward. That requires a lot of thinking and trying out. There's an enormous size of, enormous transformation taking place there. And we really need new brains. And here there are some numbers on that. In an African country, on average, we would spend about, let's say, agriculture represents 20% of GDP. In a wealthy country like the US or the Netherlands, it's 4% or even lower, 3%. Agro-industry in an African country might be 5 to 10%. In kind of the wealthy countries, it's at 12%, maybe even a bit higher. What that implies in the end is that the agro-industry, or the kind of the complex of activities around the primary sector, it grows 10 times as quick as agriculture. 10 times as quick. That's really a lot. That needs a lot of brains. And if we concentrate our brains on the primary production, we are surely going to be left behind. So we've been working over the years on tools to think about these issues and to kind of to work on them. And one of the tools that I bumped into kind of about 15 years ago was innovation systems. And innovation systems that basically start bringing in some of these elements, but not in a fully kind of, let's say, cognizant manner. The innovation system starts saying, well, it's the markets that drive the changes. It's the market that drives the transformations that we're looking for. And it's basically often the partnerships that make it work. And the partnerships is really important because, what you tend to find in this new type of economy that we're moving to, it's very often not one person that has all the skill sets. It's partnerships. that make it work. And so these innovation systems helped us to start understanding that we need to think beyond production and beyond productivity. Now I can tell you, when we came up with that concept about 12 years ago, that wasn't really easily accepted in the bank. That took us quite some work to start kind of, let's say, getting acceptance for it. But I think that is by now a kind of a station that we've passed. And people now think about innovation not anymore in production only. We've been working on tools to put in place consortia, kind of alliances, where actors that are good on production issues work with actors that are good on marketing issues, or that are good on understanding consumption. And in these alliances, you're able to make more progress. We've been talking about incubators, so he had a 2-minute sign up. I'm not going to comply with that one, impossible. But I'll skip this one. So since Alex already talked about the incubators. One of the things that we did, kind of also in India, we put in place business development units, kind of in these research institutions. And what it helped them to do, it helped them to start valuing and marketing the technologies that they put out. So it helped them understand that it wasn't only about agriculture production. And I checked back on those a little time ago, and then I found this very nice quote. And there Dr. Rao, I don't know who Dr. Rao is, but he starts referring to a term I want to keep up. Kind of starts referring to agripreneurs, to convert traditional farming into farm business. And I want us to start defining agripreneurs. What are the agripreneurs that we need? The people that put this transformation in place from primary agriculture to more sophisticated systems. Another tool that we've been using a lot in Latin America, and that we are now starting to export to other parts of the world, are the productive alliances. And they combine 3 things. They say, well, you know, it's not only about production. It's very much about linking, kind of, let's say, with a market. It's very much about making sure there's money available to farmers to invest in the system. It's about technical assistance, doing it better. And it's also about organizing. And maybe organizing has been the element that today I've been missing in the discussion. In this transformation and in the entrepreneurship, we need to make sure that these small farmers and these small businessmen, that they get some power from being organized. Now, what are the type of things that we see in these entrepreneurship stories? It's always the market that drives the change. There are many more chances in processing than there are in production. It helps if an entrepreneur can be hedged in a favorable context, if you provide him some support, but not too long, because in the end he'll have to make it on his own. Then you see that the type of skills are very different from what we've always been talking about. Organization, management, partnering, funding, knowledge, risk avoidance. Agronomy usually doesn't even show up. And a very important point is that domestic markets are often big enough. Okay, you know, we often hear all this blah blah about the export markets. You know, that's useful, it's very nice. Dutch consumers will get cheaper flour, and we'll love that. But usually there is enough of a demand in the domestic markets itself. Now, a key point that comes up is we need to prepare the brains that will lead the agricultural transformation. And we don't have, not by any way, enough brains in place. This requires some major thinking of educational programs, both at university and at vocational level. From agronomy to business management, from plant breeding to ICT, from pest control to marketing, from soil science to consumer behavior, from botany to business plans. So we need to really start rethinking about how the education of the future agripreneurs needs to take place. Again, here there are some nice examples, some programs that are making progress on this, and Forum is one that I would like to call your attention to. Now, what did I learn making this presentation, and also over the years of it? Well, one thing what I learned, first of all, is that this is very much a field in flux. And I've been listening to all the presentations with a lot of interest. It's really good. And I think we all have pieces of the puzzle. But we don't have a very clear kind of theory of action. We don't have a kind of a very stylized way of going about the issue of that. So we're still all learning. Well, what I learned, 10 times more growth in agro-industry than in agriculture. And that's really a thing that blew my mind. And then a conclusion that follows is that, well, you know, the value chain is okay, but do we really worry about primary production? Is it not really much more about the rest, where the change is going to be? And this is challenging it a bit. Maybe we need to work much less on primary production and much more on all the links. Another point, and this came out in a few of the other presentations, the future is in the intersection of agriculture and the rest of the economy. It's on the edge of rural and urban. It's in the small towns. So we need also, we can start locating our interventions, I think. Another conclusion, yes, Pamesh, we also need more Pameshs. We need more Shakiks, more Lorraines, more Jihais, more Iras. These are some people in our global practice that have a background from outside of agriculture, on IT or on nutrition or on mechanization. So we need more of those types of people. We need to much more to engage with education to get the right people in place. On the one hand, through educational curricula. On the other hand, because this is the place where incubators will be established. This is the place where new initiatives can be brought about. We need a double transformation in preparing youth. We need to focus on skills more than knowledge, and we need to focus on business more than production. And there is a new class of entrepreneur coming up here, the agripreneur. And I want us to define the agripreneur. So I would like to come up with a contest where each one of us writes an essay of a page on the agripreneur. Okay, those are my points.